So you said you're 17? Mm-hmm. So technically, will you be eligible to vote?
I'll be allowed to vote. My birthday is on the 23rd, so I have 2 weeks when I'm 18, so before the election. So I will be allowed to vote. In that, when I'm 18, I'll be given that knowledge that allows me to be able to vote at the age of 18. Because obviously, at the age of 17, I'm not smart enough to vote. Well, when the exit poll came out, I was totally shocked. I remember I saw the figures on the screens and I couldn't really say anything because I thought I must have got it wrong. I remember pointing at the Tory number and saying, God, that's down. But as far as the result goes, I was absolutely enthralled. We didn't win, but when you look at the vote share, the Conservatives got 42.5% of the vote and the Labour Party got 40% of the vote. So that's a 2.5% difference in votes from a party that they said was doomed. So yeah, large portions of humble pie for the taking. Well, as far as surprise goes, for Kirklees, for me it wasn't really a big shock. Because you've got Paula Sheriff, who's doing outstanding work in Parliament, especially with the tampon tax. It was her that was pushing it, and she's a real inspiration of mine. With Tracy Bravin, you've got an excellent constituency MP who knows what it's like to live from hand to mouth, who's been on the breadline, who knows what it's like for these ordinary working people that the Tories are purporting to defend. Barry Shearman speaks for himself. I mean, he's held Huddersfield for God knows how many decades. He's a good MP, and he's served the town well, and he got voted in again. And then there's Thelma. Thelma has been a head teacher for about 30 years, I think. She's an excellent, she's a wonderful woman. And then bear in mind, she's replacing Jason McCartney. He came into my old college, Greenhead, purporting to be a defender of the Save Our HRI campaign. Then when I was asking him about the CCG being a mechanism to divert blame, he avoided the question, he wouldn't answer, he wouldn't hold his government to account for their actions. So yeah, Thelma was right to replace Jason McCartney, and I'm very proud of her. In terms of representation, I think Labour are doing very, very well. We have all-women shortlists in some seats, be that for whole constituencies or even just for council wards, to ensure that there is a balance. We have the most diverse and representative shadow cabinet ever. So I think Labour's doing very, very well. But also, you must bear in mind, whilst representation is important in terms of your identity and your characteristics, you have to look at how that affects legislation and how that affects role models. I mean, you've got a Conservative government saying that because they've got a female Prime Minister, they're doing well for the women of the country and for the feminist cause. But when they're putting forth legislation that makes women fill in eight pages of documentation about their rape in order to get child tax benefits, I mean, that's no party for women in my eyes. I was watching his speech, his maiden speech in the Commons not so long ago on Facebook, and he was saying how in his constituency people were writing to him, and outside of his constituency too, saying that they feel more empowered because at last there is someone in Parliament that looks like me. And it's not just for the Labour Party, though you can probably guess I'm not all in favour for them. The Conservatives, I remember, I think it might have been the 2015 election, one of their big posters that they had on streets was, what can the Conservative Party do for a kid from Rochdale, I think? And I think they were talking about Sajid Javid, and it was like they put him in the cabinet. So we are seeing more people from ethnic minorities coming into power. Yeah, the ball's definitely rolling on this one, and it's looking positive. Well, for me, tuition fees was a massive issue in the election, as it was for a lot of other young people and people with kids too. I was enthused by the fact that Corbyn's Labour Party promised to get rid of tuition fees. Now, as far as student debt goes, a massive kerfuffle's been made of this. There was absolutely, you find me a copy of the Labour manifesto for the many, not the few, and point out to me where it says that Labour will eradicate student debt. It's not in there. You know, it's pretty predictable, pretty typical that the powers that be would try and make it seem like Corbyn promised to eradicate student debt. What he said was that he's aware of the issue, it's on the list, he knows that a lot of people are disenchanted with the idea that they have a large amount of debt to pay off. There was no promise to sort it out. He acknowledged that the issue was there. No, and I don't think you can be pretty objective and say that. I mean, I remember a couple of months ago, The Independent did a study into that very issue, and their research found that 75% of articles and broadcasts misrepresent Jeremy Corbyn and what he's said. I mean, you get figures like David Dimbleby saying that Jeremy Corbyn is not treated fairly by the press and that the Tories have de facto control over it. You can be pretty objective and say that, I think. Well, let's look at the issue here. So the media and the establishment, powers that be, whatever you'd like to call it, are drawing a lot of attention to the fact that Jeremy Corbyn has broken a promise that he never made. The Conservatives are in such a weak position that they have had to abandon their entire manifesto. Nothing's been made of it, really. Your manifesto is your mandate to be elected, and they've abandoned it all. I mean, that's the real issue here. Thankfully they have. I mean, God, that wouldn't have been a good situation if they'd stuck to it. Well, politics will be an arena dominated by a certain class as long as we allow it to be so. Angela Rayner is a massive idol of mine. She just needs to carry on speaking with her broad accent and carry on talking on behalf of the people that she was elected to represent with the language that they speak, with the accent that they speak. I mean, I can't remember what the debate was about, but it would have been last week or maybe the week before. Angela Rayner was speaking at the dispatch box, and who was it? It was Ian Duncan-Smith telling her to be quiet and to sit down, and the speaker had to intervene and tell the Conservative MPs to calm down, to let her speak like she was put there to do. So yeah, it will continue being the Westminster bubble as long as we allow it to. Angela Rayner's doing a brilliant job, and her very presence there is what's scaring them. Her very presence there, the fact that she will speak with the accent that she has been brought up with, is what's scaring them, and she must continue to do so she can continue to be a role model for other people with those accents from working class backgrounds who are, she calls herself a council estate socialist, and I really like that label. So she can carry on being a role model for those people and show them that it is for for the many and not the few. Well, I'm hopeful for quite a lot of them. I mean, we've mentioned Angela Rayner. I think she's a rising star. I mean, she's come from, relative obscurity, and now she's the Shadow Education Minister, and her characteristics is what makes her so shocking, and her presence in Parliament is what makes her so shocking. Well, shocking to some, not to all. I think she is a good role model, and I'd like her to go far because she provides a lot of hope and a lot of confidence to people that have been stepped on for decades by a succession of cruel Tory governments. Who else looks promising? Like I say, Emily Thornberry, she humiliates Boris Johnson every single time at the dispatch box because he hasn't got a foot to stand on. Especially with Brexit as well. Keir Starmer commands a lot of trust behind him and a lot of confidence. I mean, God knows what's going to happen with David Davis, but I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would rather have Keir Starmer doing the negotiations. So yeah, there's a whole different array of different politicians from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different social classes, different ages. I've got more young MPs now too. I mean, there's Cat Smith, who was the ex-Shadow Minister for Young People. She did a great job, and she's getting a lot of more young people into politics. So yeah, you know, things can only get better. Well, I mean, you shouldn't see going into politics as just a job, because it's not just a job. I mean, you are granted influence by those who vote for you on a mandate of a manifesto. I mean, it's not just a career that you should do because you need a job or because you like the bravado of it. You should work your way up through a party, or not even through a party, through be it unions or by a different campaign group. You shouldn't just go into it as something to do to earn money. I mean, you should separate what you want to do and how you and then make a living. And if you can marry the two together through politics, fine. I would just say, look how far we've come, you know, and look how scared they all are. There's a reason why you never find the Conservative Party encouraging young people to vote, to register to vote. Elections do carry a lot of enthusiasm around them, and rightly so. It's an important time of the year. But the thing is, the Conservative Party are holding on by the fingernails. Like I said before, there's a 2.5% in the vote share that the Conservatives had and the Labour Party had. I mean, and that was a change that came from below. That happened from the grassroots up. It wasn't from the top down. So what would be most convenient for the Conservatives is to act as if everything's fine, we'll just carry on, it's not really a big deal. I mean, with the DUP, they have a small majority, so yeah, they can carry on, but no, behind the scenes, they're quaking in the boots, and they can't let anybody know that. So to young people, I would say, just hang in there, hold on. They want you to feel disenchanted, they want you to feel disillusioned, because they know if you are half as good as you were before, they'll be out.